All right, hello everybody. Today I have for you a late night reading wrap up. This is going to be books 141 to 145. Um, I'm just honestly, like, I've got the time right now and I am so behind on reading wrap ups and everything that I just figured I would just do one, even though it's, like 8:44 at night. I look awful. I'm wearing pajamas, my makeup's gone, my hair is all wet because I took a bath because I just wanted to relax. But we're going to talk about 5 books. First up, we've got one that I don't have in physicality. It's Animal Farm. I'll put up a picture of the cover. This is one that I read to teach. This Animal Farm is for the 8th graders. If for some reason you have managed to go through your life without reading or hearing about Animal Farm, it is a very heavy-handed allegory for the Russian Revolution about animals that take over their farm and then suddenly they're fascists. It's fun. I have not read much Orwell, unfortunately. I've only read Animal Farm and 1984, both of which I actually reread last year to teach, so that's super fun. But this one, I mean, it's a fun one. It's a very quick read. It's a very easy kind of... I mean, there's a reason it's taught to 8th graders, right? Like, it's a very easy book. It's very, very clear, and it's very... Like, Orwell does not really beat around the bush with what he's trying to tell you here. Like, he is just like, this, and this. These pigs are... They're dictators. Now, this started out as a nice little communism and now it's fascism because, shocker kids, communism doesn't work. So there was that. It was interesting. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. There's not that much to say about it. Then I read something a little bit more interesting. I read If It Bleeds by Stephen King. I believe this is the newest Stephen King release. There's going to be another one coming out this year. I'm filming this at the end of January 2021. But this is a novella collection, and it was a pretty good one from what I remember. I read this back in October, so I'm just flipping through to see, trying to remember what it was. I did very much enjoy it. I really liked a lot of the different novellas in here. Mr. Harrigan's Phone was the first one. It was about this young man who went and he would read to this old man and talk to him and help him out with stuff. And then at the end, then this old man dies because he's old. And so this boy, who's now about a teenager now, young teenager, in the preteen range, he calls him just because he wants to hear his voicemail, and he leaves voicemail I really need your help with this, or this guy is messing with me, and then the guy dies. And it's really, really interesting. I do really think it's so weird to me to see Stephen King write about modern technology. I realize that he's an old man, but he's kept up with the times, but I'm so used to seeing him write about stuff from the 60s through the 90s, or 60s through 80s even. And I mean, it is so weird. I know he puts in so much detail in those older books, so of course he's gonna put that much realistic detail in these newer ones as well. It is just weird. It just doesn't feel right. Like Stephen King to me feels like it should be an old paperback from 1983, I don't know. And then there was The Life of Chuck, which was super interesting. The Life of Chuck was just straight up fun. The Life of Chuck is the world just kind of starts ending, and nobody really knows. Don't mind all the yelling of people below me are jackasses. The world starts ending, and nobody really knows what's happening. But then you jump into this head of this guy named Chuck, and you kind of just see his whole life, and he's just. It's a weird one. You kind of have to read it for yourself because it doesn't really lend itself well to being explained, but it was a fun one and I really enjoyed it. If It Bleeds was a Mr. Mercedes, Bill Hodges, Outsider, Holly Gibney story. So if you do not want spoilers for all those books, or I think it technically comes before The Outsider, so I guess you could read it before you read The Outsider. But if you don't want spoilers for Mr. Mercedes, I would read that series before you read this book, because Mr. Mercedes seems to be Stephen King's new thing to jump off of. I think he's just become so enamored with the character of Holly Gibney that he just has to shove her in everywhere, which is fine. I mean, she's an interesting character. But it is another it's just another Holly Gibney story. There's another monster. It was really fun. I enjoyed it a lot. And then Rat, which I remember nothing about. Oh man, I think it's it's a short one because so Rat, it's another one of those struggling Stephen King writer stories. It's this guy, the struggling writer, he goes up to this cabin to try and write. There's a massive snowstorm, and he lets this rat inside. And then he, like, it's a weird thing, like, is this rat, like, what's up with this rat, kind of thing. It was interesting. And overall, I do think this was a very kind of solid novella collection. I enjoyed all of them, you know, like, I liked them all. I think if I had to pick a favorite, it would probably be, honestly, Life of Chuck. Just because it was so weird and wild and out there. Like, it reminded me of the old, like, Stephen King short stories and, like, Skeleton Crew or Night Shift. So I could really get behind that. So it would probably be Life of Chuck. Mr. Harrigan's Phone I really enjoyed too. Rat, I mean, I feel like we've read stuff like Rat from Stephen King 1,000 times, you know, like, I enjoy it, but it's like, it's the same thing as, like, Secret Window, Secret Garden, and, like, The Dark Half, and, like, Misery, and, like, all these, like, struggling writers who don't know what to do. Like, I don't know, like, I don't even know if this is that relatable to Stephen King, because he pumps out 2 fucking books a year, so he can't be that struggling for ideas, you know? I don't know. I'm just kind of sick of it. But it's fine. I think I gave it 4 or 5 stars, probably 5. I really enjoyed it. Then I read another book to teach, and that is this time for the 7th graders. I will put up a picture. It is Prisoner B3087 by Alan Gratz. This is a middle grade book about an actual man. I forget his name. He's Yannick in the book. I think Jack Gruen. I will put up the correction if I'm wrong, but Alan Gratz is a middle grade author who writes a lot of books about, like, refugees and war and stuff like that for middle grade readers. And the 7th graders, I will say, really loved it. The 7th graders love the Holocaust. It's a little weird, but we'll go with it. But Prisoner B3087 is like a Night situation by Elie Wiesel, except for younger readers. It's kind of geared towards the 11, 12, 13-year-old age range, which makes it a lot easier to read. But it was, I mean, it was very well done. I think it's a good way to kind of start showing the horrors of war to 7th graders, because I will say when I started, I asked them, so what do you know about the Holocaust? And they had nothing. They had absolutely nothing. One of them was like, Anne Frank? It was like, I mean, yeah, there you go. Anne Frank was there. That, which is also the same thing that the 9th graders had about the Holocaust, but that is neither here nor there. Then I read Tricks by Ellen Hopkins. This is your typical Ellen Hopkins book. It's written in verse. It's about a serious issue. It's a very issue booky. Like, Ellen Hopkins, as I've said many times before, is the queen of issue books, capital I, capital B. This one's about sex trafficking. So that's fun. And then it's about teenagers who start turning tricks to kind of either get the money that they want, to escape things, to survive. And it was okay. I mean, honestly, as far as Ellen Hopkins books go, this wasn't like the worst. At least she didn't spend the time either the entire book. The main character was not pretending to be Mexican, or it wasn't a weird Mormon thing. So that's good, I guess. I don't know. I don't know why I'm like a glutton for punishment. You know, like, I just keep buying and reading these books, and I know I won't like them. I know that I'm not going to. I know that they're just so overblown and dramatic. Like, I remember when people were all about these fucking Ellen Hopkins books, and I mean, they're all so dark. They're fucking Go-Ask Alice on steroids, except for they don't claim to be a real story, you know? And so, like, they look so interesting and so fun, and then I read them, and they're not. So, yeah, I don't know, maybe it's the fact that it is written in verse. It's a very quick read because it's written in verse. It's like a 500-page book, but if you take into account the fact that it's written in verse, it's like a 250. I think I gave it 3 stars. It was okay. And then I read, finally, another book for teaching, and that was for the juniors and seniors, British lit. It's Russian, but whatever. One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich by Alexander Solzenhitsyn, I think. I don't have the author name written down. I will put up a picture of the book. But this is like one day in the life of a prisoner in a Russian gulag, and it's very interesting. I mean, those Russian writers, I remember thinking this when I was in college and reading a lot of Russian literature. Russian guys can write. I don't know what it is. Maybe they just have such a depressing life that they just have to get amazing at writing. And I know that this is also coming from the person who was about to dig up Tolstoy and burn him to death alive, his dead body, whatever, on Exilog through War and Peace last year. But Russian writers are they're just good. I mean, Dostoevsky, Nabokov, Tolstoy, uh, this guy Solzenhitsyn, I think Solzenhitsyn. It's something along those lines. He's a good writer, and it doesn't have any chapters. It's just straight through because it's just one day. It's like wake up to sundown, and it's really interesting because it's talking about the life of this guy, and I mean, he's been imprisoned for years now, and he's got a couple years left, but he knows that it's very unlikely that he's going to get out, but he's still counting down the days anyway. So there's like a weird sort of optimism in it. I don't know, it was a good book. I mean, like I said, the Russians can write. They're very good at it, and this is actually a pretty short one. So if you're looking to get into Russian literature, I would suggest One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, because it is pretty short. It's like 250 pages, which is a far cry from War and Peace's 1,400. So, you know. But these are books 141 to 145, plus the 3 that I do not have physical copies of. That is all I have for today. I will talk to you later, and goodbye.